Well, hello and welcome back. If you're a return visitor, today I'm going to talk about the Panasonic GH5, which is Panasonic's top of the line professional mirrorless interchangeable lens camera. And I have the Olympus 12 to 100 millimeter lens on there, constant f4, which is the professional 24 to 200 millimeter equivalent on full frame in the micro four thirds. So the Olympus lens on the Panasonic body, we'll talk about that. There's something about the stabilization I want to talk about because, as you know, or you may know, maybe you don't, but a lot of the Olympus lenses don't have image stabilization built into the lens, but Panasonic always did because they didn't have IS in the body, but now they're doing that in the G85, GH5, and a few others. So anyway, on the Olympus you can use the IS in the lens and in the body together to get a higher, longer, sorry about that, I got distracted by the cat rubbing on something, get more stabilization. Anyway, so we'll talk about that. First of all, let me just say I don't normally insert any photos or anything like that in these videos because I'm just doing this with one recording, just doing my talking, and put the link on the description down in the description of the video. So look for that, and I already have a gallery with GH5 images in it, but it's only from, as of today, 1 week's worth of photos because I only got this about a week ago. But I thought I'd go ahead and do it because it's just a camera, and you know, I'm not using it for all the video functions. You know, I'm not going to get deep into the woods or weeds with the video functions. I'm just really going to talk about still photography because that's kind of what I do, and it's just a hobby and it's not professional at all, but I try to get the best results I can, obviously. So this talk is mostly just going to be about still photography, the GH5, the Olympus 12 to 100, why I chose this, and you know why I went ahead and bought it when I really hadn't planned on buying it, because I still had a Nikon D750, Nikon Df, which are DSLRs, of course, full frame, and I had recently bought a Panasonic G85, which my plan was to use it for you know, easy video because it makes nice videos very easily for people that's not experienced with video very much, like myself. And I was going to take that to the big Yellowstone Glacier National Park trip this summer, which is next month, and thought I would do that. But you know, I got to using the G85 and I was really impressed with it, and it was just so easy to get great images. And knowing that the GH5 has better image quality overall as far as you know, a larger sensor, and I believe it does have a little more dynamic range. We'll kind of get into that. But the more I used the G85, I thought, well, you know what, going back and forth between my G85 and the Nikon D70, which I had, D750, I'm sorry, you know, it just got to the point where, you know, I was picking up the G85 all the time, and I think we're to the point now where dynamic range is well more than good enough for these cameras, and high ISO is really the only spot you're going to be giving up, you know, the really high performance if you get a micro four thirds compared to a full frame camera. Okay, so let's go into just we'll beat it to death, but the size and weight issue, because a lot of people talk about that. So the GH5 with the Olympus 12 to 100, and again, this is a professional constant f4 lens, weather sealed. It's got image stabilization, so that's a 24 to 200 millimeter equivalent in full frame, and there's never really been a lens like this. So this weighs a total of 3 pounds, almost exactly, with the strap, the body, the lens, and the battery in. The Nikon Df I have, which is the smallest full-frame DSLR that Nikon makes, that weighed with the 24 to 120 Nikon f4. So of course you're lacking 80 millimeter on that lens compared to this one. So this is 24 to 200 equivalent. The Nikon Df with the 24 to 120 f4 weighs 3 pounds 7 ounces, and I've got a picture of those side by side in my gallery. So, in that case, you're losing 80 millimeter on the 24 to 120 on the Nikon side. And, I'm kind of surprised Olympus made this lens because honestly, I don't really need any other lenses. There's a few other lenses I would love to have, and maybe someday I'll get them, like the 75 millimeter f1.8. That would be a fun lens to have. But technically, I don't really need it. This lens here is very sharp, very high quality, and a good size. Fits very well on the GH5, and it's comfortable. So there's that. Yeah, and the lens sizes overall for micro four thirds, a lot of people make a big deal about the GH5 body. Well, look at it. It's literally about as big as a Nikon Df, and it is. The pentagram, the pentaprism, the viewfinder hump on the Nikon Df sticks up farther, so maybe right in there. So, but the Nikon Df is just about as thick as the main body on the GH5. Of course, the Nikon Df doesn't have the nice grip on the front; just got a little hump here, and but otherwise, the body itself is just about the same size, the same height, and that's a full frame camera. So yeah, but the thing is, you talk about usability and having all these buttons. I mean, look, you've got a dedicated white balance, ISO, exposure compensation, function button, video button, shutter button, front command dial, the rear command dial, all the focus modes, manual, continuous, single, AF on button there, which you can customize any way you want, joystick, the mode dial here, which is locking. There's a press in and out, so you can spin it or lock it into place. I really leave it unlocked because it's not that hard or not easy to change it, so it's not a big deal. And then of course over here your the drive mode for single, continuous burst, whatever you want to call it, multiple photos at one time, press and hold and spray and pray. Yeah, and then so you've got other buttons scattered throughout, function button there, playback button there, which I don't use because it's inconvenient. The playback button on the G85, whoops, is over here, so I actually reprogrammed that one, but we'll go over that in a minute. Yeah, so the size of it, I mean, it's comfortable. Look, I'm 5'8", and this, I'm just an average size American male, so this fits on my hand very well. I like the grip, it's comfortable, and when my hand's on the front of it, the small finger is just about coming over the bottom of it there, so you're not doing one of those deals where you've got your couple fingers down here below the bottom of the body and it's not comfortable at all. So if you put any kind of significant lens on here, anything meaningful, professional lenses, anything gets a little bit bigger, then it's nice to have the bigger body anyway. So to me, it's not a big issue. I would rather have this than try to hold a rectangular piece of magnesium with no grip that just slides right the hell out of your hand. So I would rather have this, and the DF doesn't have much of a grip at all, so I bought one of those Grizz half cases and ended up taking it back off because I don't use it much, and I just hold it the way it is. That's fine. So moving on from the size and weight, you've got the usage. So the joystick here, which is right here. Now the really nice thing about the joystick is it's rubbery. It's not just a slick piece of crap plastic that you can't really move easily. You reach over there with your thumb, it's right under your thumb, it's very easy to get to. You can use it for things like when you're viewing photos. If you just happen to have a picture of a hydrangea shrub on it, that may not be exposed right here for this, but anyway, if you zoom in, you spin the command dial once, zoom in on it, and then you can use the joystick to kind of move it around, and then you click it again in the middle, it goes back to that. And then as far as the focus points, if you're moving your focus point around like so, you can take your picture, and then you can press it in the center, press the joystick in the center, and then your focus point goes right back to where it was. I think you can See, if you just keep clicking it, it goes back where it used to be, or in the center. So you can kind of like, oh, I had it over there, I want to go back to that. Click it once, click it again, go back to the center. So that's a nice touch there. But the joystick, I love it. There's a lot of good uses for it. You can also use it for navigating the menus. Probably already seen that. Let's see if I can get in there real quick without wasting too much time. So yeah, you can get into the menu, you know, just kind of push it over to the right, push back over to the left, go down, up, whatever, you know. Very easy for that kind of thing. Let's see. Okay, so one-shot spot metering. So I've got the spot metering. It's like the temporary spot metering assigned to the front function button here next to the lens. The Nikon DSLRs used to have a, well, they still do. That button would be like defaulted to depth of field preview. And what I would do is reassign it to spot metering, so I can just press and hold, you know, get spot metering off something if I'm just going to temporarily spot meter off of something that's really bright, get the exposure where I want it, and recompose and then take a shot. Panasonic, I think, has improved on that, where this is just a, if you set it on this button or any button you decide to put it on, you press it once and release it. Now it's in spot metering until you take a picture, and then after that picture it goes back to the metering mode you were in. So that's great. I love that. It's just a little, just going to go over some of the things I like about it, and there's obviously a lot of reviews out about the GH5. If I'm rambling too much, you know, it's the internet. There's plenty of videos to go watch, so just do that and don't complain, okay? So okay, left of, I'm trying to read my notes here for yeah, okay, yeah, sorry I did that. Yeah, so customizing in general, all of these function buttons. So again, there's one here, there's one here, here, which some of these are pre-assigned from the factory, of course. So this one right above the dial back here was metering mode, I think. This one was a quick menu, which still is. This was a delete or backwards button. The top button, I have it programmed to turn on the wireless, you know, the Wi-Fi. Front button I already talked about is a spot metering, one-time spot meter. So the way I do this is, since I got used to using the playback button, which is over here on the GH5 and not convenient, because if you're, you know, you get your hand somewhere else and you got the camera to your eye and you want to view the picture in the viewfinder, you know, you may have to move your hand, come up here and press that. It's not convenient. So since I was used to it on the G85 already, I just went ahead and reprogrammed this as the playback button. And let's see what the other ones were. I forget now. So, okay, and then the left press of this dial back here, that's the AF area mode, you know, so the autofocus mode. So that's a left press there on this spinny dial back here. So left press goes into the focus mode, and pressing up goes into the metering mode. So the other two I don't have assigned. You know, if you press right, doesn't do anything. Press down, doesn't do anything. I don't really want it to do anything. Okay, image quality. So we'll go over the image quality now. Turn this off. Image quality on the GH5, ISO is kind of what you would expect it to be. I think it's very good. I've got a set of ISO test images in my gallery. You'll see that link for that in my normal image gallery for the GH5. So I've got you know, ISO series in there that I usually do just for myself to kind of just, you know, a little comparison between the cameras. And you know, it does very well, but obviously it's not as well as a larger sensor like an APS-C or full frame, and that's obvious. I mean, everybody that's into photography already knows that, so I'm not really going to dwell on that much. But I don't really do high ISO photography much at all anyway. And while I'm talking about it, one of the things I do with auto ISO, I've been setting, even on my full frame DSLRs, I've been setting the ISO limit, the upper limit, to no more than like 800 or so. And on the Micro Four Thirds, I set it to 400 for a few reasons. First of all, you know, ISO gets worse and worse as you go up on the Micro Four Thirds. Not as good as full frame, so there's that. But you know, it's just you end up with some faster shutter speeds because you keep your aperture at a wider aperture because you've got naturally deeper depth of field with micro four thirds, so that's kind of one of the advantages in some ways. If you need f8 depth of field on a full frame, you may have to jack up the ISO because your shutter speed's slowing down. If you're trying to hand hold, you may get a blurry shot, so you have to crank up the ISO. But with micro four thirds, if you're at f4, you're already at depth of field like f8, but you still got the light gathering ability of f4, so you can keep a lower ISO in those cases. So anyway, I set the auto ISO to just really 400. There's some chances or situations where I may want to go higher than that, but normally I don't need to. So there's that, and you know, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that, because I don't think that people talk about that too much. Is the you've got the depth of field. So again, f4 on this lens, f4 on micro four thirds is like f8 on full frame as far as the depth of field, but f4 on this lens is still f4 as far as light gathering ability, so you can get a faster shutter speed. And so if you're taking a close up of something and you're trying to hand hold and it's a little bit lower light, you can, and you only need f8 depth of field, you can use f4 on this lens or any other micro four thirds lens, and you've already got the depth of field of f8. But you have the benefit of the wider aperture, which brings in more light, which means your shutter speed can be higher, and you don't have to crank up the ISO. So it kind of works both ways. You know, there's advantages to full frame with better quality at high ISO, but a lot of times you don't need the higher ISO. Okay, so then the other thing about image quality, this is a 20 megapixel camera now instead of the 16 megapixel, which micro four thirds has been for a long time. Just kind of going over some things and modeling the camera as I talk. So I always shoot in 3:2 aspect ratio, so I'm probably losing, I haven't really done the math, what is it, about 4 meg or so of each picture I take anyway, because I'm chopping off part of the top and bottom. So actually I wish these had, were native 3:2 aspect ratio sensors instead of 4:3, because then I wouldn't lose any resolution at all. But anyway, it's 20 megapixel now instead of 16, so I get more room for cropping if I need to, and so on. And a dynamic range is one of the things that surprised me about this. Now this has got, according to DxO, if you believe the ratings there, some people argue about the ratings on DxO Mark, their website where they compare, the ISO rating, the dynamic range, and so forth. So the Nikon D810 is like one of the best, or maybe still the best, camera out there for great dynamic range, where you can shoot a picture, underexposed quite a bit, and then boost the shadows in post-processing. Now this one, my Nikon D750 had 14.5. That was a score on DxO, and the GH5 scores 13, even 13.0. And then if you look at something like the Canon 5D Mark IV, as far as the dynamic range, it only scores 13.6, so it's only 0.6 better dynamic range than the GH5. And if you look around the YouTube, there's a well-known landscape photographer using the 5D Mark IV, Canon 5D Mark IV, and quite a few other people. It's basically a professional quality full-frame DSLR, and nobody complains about the dynamic range on there. I mean, well, maybe some people do, but you get the point. So then the Nikon D4 and the Nikon Df, they both share the same sensor, but the Nikon Df that I have, it only scores 13.1 for dynamic range. So, disregarding the scores, I've got a few examples. They're not extreme examples, but they're realistic examples on my website, the gallery for this. Some things that I would be doing. And so those examples show, there's really very good dynamic range, and I think there's really no issue at all with dynamic range, and I'm actually kind of surprised by it, how well it does, the GH5, and I'm extremely happy with it, and so I have no regrets at all as far as dynamic range goes. All right, so we talked about that. One thing I'll talk about with this lens, I think I'm getting pretty close to being done. This lens, the Olympus 12-100 f4, again, you know, it has the image stabilization right here on the lens. You can switch that on or off. And that matters on an Olympus body, but check this out on the Panasonic body. So I'm in the stabilizer menu, if you can see that. So I've got the image stabilization on, the switch on the lens. So I'm going to click over and look at that. This menu item cannot be set. You have no way to set the stabilizer in the body with this lens on here. Even if I turn it off, so I'll turn the camera off, flip this switch off, turn the camera back on, go back in here in the menu, stabilizer menu. Now that switch is off, but again, this item can't be set. I'm not really sure about that. I guess it'd be nice, sorry about that, if somebody could find out the answer for that, or somebody already knows. But as far as I know, with this lens attached, it's not using the IS in the body at all. Now my assumption would be, or was, that if you have the switch turned off on the lens, even though it's a Olympus lens, it's going to use the image stabilization in the body, but it's not, or at least I don't think it is. You know, I've turned it off and taken some pictures, you know, slower shutter speeds, and they were just, you know, all blurry, like you had the image stabilization turned off. So as far as I can tell, you either use the IS in the lens here or not. You know, either so all or nothing. You either use the IS in the lens, the Olympus lens here, or you don't have IS at all. Now, if I put like a non-stabilized Olympus lens on there, like I've got the 45mm f1.8, attach that, and I do have the menus in the camera for the stabilizer. So I don't know. It'd be nice to have Panasonic's answer on that. But I'm assuming when you have this lens on here that you get no stabilization from the camera at all. It's just all coming from the lens. And if you have the lens turned off, then your image stabilization is totally turned off. Okay, so just real quick, I don't normally do super slow shutter speeds, and if I did, I would use a tripod. But just for the heck of it, I zoomed out to 100mm, which is 200mm equivalent again. And as you know, they normally suggest if you don't have image stabilization that you would be, if you're at 200mm, you would use a shutter speed of like 1/200th of a second. So anyway, out at 100mm, which is 200mm equivalent, I was able to get sharp images at 1/5 of a second. You know, when I go back up to like 1/15th of a second, which is normally where I like to draw the line anyway, you know, I get just about all of them are sharp. And again, that's at 200mm. So if you zoom back out to 12mm or wider, then, you know, it just gets easier and easier to handhold like that. So let's see. So I've talked about that. Yeah, and as far as the lens goes, you know, like I said, it is very sharp. Does have the nice ring there where you can pull it back and instantly get into manual focus instead of having to switch to manual focus back here on the camera. So that's really nice. I like that when I had the 12-40 f2.8. I had that with my old EM1, because I had the EM1 in the past, the original, not the Mark II. Had the EM5, the original EM5, and I've had going further back, like the Panasonic GH2, which I took to Yellowstone in 2011 as a backup and just like a video camera for my go along with my Nikon D750. You know, I think that's pretty much it. You know, so I think I've covered everything that I wrote down that I wanted to go over. But again, you haven't seen this side very much, have you? I don't regret buying the GH5 at all. I'm extremely happy with my purchase, and you know, if I said that I was happy with my purchase, it would be a huge understatement, because I'm very, very happy with it. I mean, it for me in still photography and how I do it, I'm telling you, it is literally like taking candy from a baby. And not that I would condone taking candy from a baby, because that's cruel, but you know what I mean. The point is, it's easy. And the reason it's easy is because you've got to really nice high magnification viewfinder. What is it, over 3 million dots resolution in there. You know, you've got the flip out screen if you need it. I don't really use it that much, honestly. Occasionally, if I want to get really low and I want to get on the ground, you know, may use it for that. But otherwise, I'm, you know, loving looking through the viewfinder. So I've got the histogram in there. Off to the bottom left, I put the histogram, leave it there all the time, so I can look at the histogram. You know, you can see the blinkies and the highlights if you want to. And from what I've learned, if you take a shot and you see something blinking when you review the photo and it's saying that it's overexposed, you know, like in the sky, you know, I found that you've got maybe anywhere from 1/3 to 3/4 or so of latitude where you can, you know, you can take it, overexpose it where the camera says it's overexposed, but technically it's not. When you, maybe it's thinking about JPEGs really, as far as whether it's thinking it's overexposed or not. But I'm always shooting RAW, and I use Adobe Lightroom for everything. So, well, one other thing about Adobe Lightroom too. But so I think you get about 1/4 to 3/4 of room there for when it says it's blinking in the camera, reviewing the images, and it's overexposed. It's really not, because when you bring it in a Lightroom, you instantly see, like, okay, it's not overexposed, and you can bring the highlights down, and, you know, like in the sky, and it looks really good. Excuse me. Okay, so Adobe Lightroom. One thing I was going to mention about that, the G85, if I remember right, it does not have the photo styles built into the Adobe profiles. So when you're shooting RAW with a GH5 and you import your pictures just like a Nikon DSLR or Canon or a lot of other cameras, you can select the photo style afterwards. You know, since it's RAW, you just go in and select, you know, like in the case of Panasonic, it can be like natural, portrait, Cinelike D, whatever the profile is that you want to use. So that was not available in the G85 for some reason. I don't know if Panasonic just didn't provide that information to Adobe, but for the GH5, fortunately, that is in there. So I've got a preset that I made that, you know, when I import my pictures, everything's converted to DNG type instead of the Panasonic RAW file. Converted to DNG, and then I apply a little preset which just has a few basic changes to it, and it applies the natural photo style, which I think, to me, actually does look the most natural. You know, it's got good color, it's not like oversaturated, it's not too dark in the shadows, and the highlights aren't all burnt out. So that works really well. So I'm happy about that also, that the GH5 does have the photo style profiles in the Adobe Lightroom, which is what I use all the time. I don't think there's anything else I can talk to about or say about the GH5. Again, extremely happy with it, and watch my gallery. You know, it's like I said, it's only been a week right now, so once I get out, certainly to Yellowstone, Glacier National Park, Badlands in South Dakota, Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota, what else? Grand Tetons National Park. I'm hitting all that next month in July 2017. Really looking forward to that. I'll be taking this and Nikon Df, and I'll do a little video about you know, my camera bag and how I've got that set up for the to carry around the GH5 and the Df. And the Df is really not going to be used too much. It'd just be kind of a backup, and, you know, just in case something tragedy struck, maybe the GH5 falls into the thermal pool. Probably not, but, you know, whatever. So I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check my image gallery, because there's going to be a lot of stuff showing up there over time. And for now, it's just mostly stuff around the house, you know, my gardening shots and stuff out and around, you know, out in the field and the old barn and stuff like that. But I think it's pretty good variety there already. It's only been a week, but be a lot more coming. Thanks.